And welcome once again. You know who I am. I'm the database guy. This is, we're in the ninth video, the last video. I want to do this in our basic VBA basics section, and we're here. We're right here. Um, you've learned at this point many different statements as we've gone through all of these statements, scope, um, and you're still learning about scope and how things work, and you'll see it when in this final video here, and this is enumeration, which is our last topic. And I wanted to bring enumeration to you because you may have a need for it. In all the time I've used Access, I don't think I've ever used it. And it could be probably because enumeration is about declaring variables, or actually declaring a number of variables, I should say, excuse me. Let's go back to our database, and we are here. We're in our module BAS enum, and we have a whole bunch of subs here, plus a public enum options. So what you do is, um, if I had stated something else, if I had public data points or something like that, I just want you to know that if I went data points, let's see, I'm not spelling it right. Yeah. So whatever I'm calling it, or I want you to be clear about that, is specifically because that's simply the name of the enumerated uh, routine that we have in here, or whatever you call it. Yeah, so we public sub enum, and then we give it a name, and then we end enum, and then we list out our options here. So what we're going to see here is how it's used and the various nuances that you have with this. So for example, the first example, we'll type in, and you will see 0, 1, 2. And wow, okay, don't know what that's about. No, there's nothing there. I don't know what they're saying here. So, oh, okay, could be something else. Go away. Got some weird stuff popping up here. Anyway, so as we saw, sorry for the interruption, as we saw here, when we printed these out, we got 0, 1, and 2. Now, why? Why did we get those values? Because the default for the first option, or the first one, will be 0, the second will be 1, and the third will be 2. Well, what happens if I set this equal to 1? And you can set these enumerated variables or enumerated items equal to something. And so what we're going to do is drop this a little bit. And we're going to go to example 2. It's the same as example 1, okay? There's no difference in the code. It's just what it tells me is when I change the option value for the first one, I should see what I'm going to get printed in the second example, and I do. Okay, I do. So this is interesting. So in other words, when I set a value to one of them, the others will simply follow suit. Instead of 0, 1, 2, now I come the next value after the value I set the option to. Okay? Don't believe that? Well, what happens if we kind of play another game here and set option 2 equal to 2? And this is example 3, of course. So if I go to example 3 here, I get 0, 2, 3. All right. And so what it does is we reset option number 2. Instead of being 1, it will now be 2, and then we will follow in sequential order to that. All right. We're going to remove this for a moment. And let's look at example 4 here. So in example 4, right, default value is always 0. So if I look here, I've got a select case statement. Remember that statement? We learned that one. We're looking at select case for OPT. This is interesting because what we did here and this here is we dimmed OPT as options. We set a variable. That's the first line of code. So we could have select case options, but this one here gives us something a little bit better. And let's just see what that looks like in IntelliSense. It's not just typed in, and we see options. Now, the reason we see options is because it's here. Let's just do this for a minute. We're going to put a 1 there. I just want to prove to you. And you see now it's options 1. So what happens is when we create these enumerated options, they become part of IntelliSense. And so it becomes a group to be found, right? And it points right to it. And you see the options, the enumerated options here and the little icon for it. So instead of select case options, which we could have done, all right, we set opt as the variable for options. Opt is not assigned and has a default value of 0. So if it has a default value of 0, and we know here we're printing out what? It's going to print 0. So option 1 should be what it would be, right? Okay. So in example 4, option 1 is indeed selected because the default for 0 would be option 1. Now, what would happen? Remember, um, if we selected, well, let's see if we did this equal to 1 and see what happens now. Now 0 is not going to be there, right? We get the else. What happened? Well, this would be 0, 1, and I'm sorry, 0, 1, and 2. Instead, we've got 1, 2, and 3. So there is no 0. In this case here, when we look at the case and we're selecting it, we are indeed looking for 0 because option is not assigned and has a default value of 0. So this one here, this variable is 0. If I said set option equal to 1, what do you think is going to happen? Well, we know which one equals 1. And, oops, sorry, we can't do the set there. We just have to do the, I always get confused. Just set, you don't have to set it. Just say option equals 1. Set is usually reserved. Let's try it now. And indeed, option 1 comes up. You know, if I have set option equal to 3, and I ran this one, which option should I get? Well, you guessed it, 3. But if I didn't set this, since option is not defined and is set to 0, and I just renumbered it here from 1, okay, I am going to get now 1, 2, 3, and I don't have a 0. Now what happens here if I do a 2? Remember the 023 here? So so obviously we're going to have a 0 variable, and we do, right? That's really interesting stuff. I'm going to do one more here for you just to tell you while we expand upon this. We're going to put this equals 28. We're going to have this equal to 30 and this one equal to, you can set whatever you want. These are, by the way, these are integers when you enumerate. You can only enumerate to integers. So what do you think I'm going to get for example 4? Well, I don't have a 0 else. Now, there's one warning, word of warning, never set all 3 options or even 2 of them to the same value. Let's see what happens here if we do this, if we debug it. Um, we still get an else but I'm going to try this. And this is the big no-no. Don't ever do this. All right, and then we're going to say, now because here we don't find it within the case, we're fine. We go to case else. So we're going to set here a little game here, option equals 30, and it's not going to know which one to pick it up. All right, let's see. It picks up one, the very first one it finds, but it's bad because I can't differentiate between any of them, right? In the first, what do we say with select case as well as things like for and for loops and for else loops? They go in order. So when you do all of them and you set them to the same value, you can't discern which option you're selecting from. That's why it's a no-no. Going back, we're still at case else. Why? Because we're saying option equals 30 here. We got to remove that. The scope of that is, hey, it's not 0, right? We set it to a variable, and now we're at option 1 once again. So what you see here is a way of setting up different types of options, and if somebody selects one or somebody chooses one, we could have named them whatever we wanted here. We could have named these enumerated values. We could have this OPT yes for, and let me see what happens. So, right. So if I set this one here, um, and let's see, OPT equals option yes for, well, we could set that to that if we wanted, but we'll call it 4 because it's the value for it. And let's see what happens. We should get a case else, right? Uh-oh, C statements are invalid between select case. Oh, I'm sorry, I put it in the wrong place. Well, that's a good thing to say. You can't put anything between a select case, doesn't like it. So we got to put it up here. Always put it after your dim. You're going to set your variable. I forgot about that one. I should have did a debug beforehand. And indeed, case else. Could we print the option selected? Let's see what happens. Comma and option. We should be able to give the option value. Let's see what happens. Nope, it's not going to give me that. Oh, opt. Just opt. Just opt. Let's see what it does here. I don't need the option because I've got opt. Right, and it's got 4. So it tells you what the option's value is. We don't need to worry about the name of the option per se, right? Because that's just the item selected. Just the value that's assigned is what we want. So we're going to take this out here and this one off of here and run this one again, and we should go back to option 1. Okay, so enumerated variables or enumerated data will help you set choices for your user and the values associated with them, and they are only integers. If you wanted to set um, some form of strings as choices, right? You wouldn't do it with enumeration. What you could do is you could store those choices in a collection, all right? And what you can do is when a user selects something, you could use that collection or you could use it to populate a combo box. And when the user selects the item, you could go through the collection and um, find the value. Or you could do it with an array too, but if you wanted. I don't see it in my 17 plus years of development work that I've done. I usually set variables that are going to be used, public or private. I have not ever used the enumerated case, but again, I could enumerate those values, and I could use those values, by the way, to again, based upon what the user is selecting, set those values to that. Now you notice with the option box, that's really enumerating values for each option selected. So it's similar to this. Okay. So that covers our basic. And when we come back we're going to have our first intermediate. And what I want to do there is I want to use everything you've learned here, or a good amount of it, particularly loops, because loops are going to be needed. We're going to do the first thing we're going to do is we're going to loop through a record set or a table, which is a record set of data, to see how we can actually parse that data that's in a table through VBA. This is one of the most useful techniques that you can have, right? Because it's going to tell you a lot of different things. It can tell you how many records are in the table. It can tell you, it can find the record of your selection. It can make changes if you want that, and so on. So stick with me. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you become a subscriber wherever you may be. Have a great day, evening, morning, life in general. Enjoy, and I will see you shortly.